2 Corinthians chapter number 4, verse number 8. We're troubled on every side, yet not distressed. We're perplexed, but not in despair. Persecuted, but not forsaken. Cast down, but not destroyed. Always bearing about in the body the dying of the Lord Jesus, that the life also of Jesus might be made manifest in our body. For we which live are always delivered unto death for Jesus' sake, that the life also of Jesus might be made manifest in our mortal flesh. So then death worketh in us, but life in you. We have the same spirit of faith, according as it is written, I believed, and therefore have I spoken. We also believe, and therefore speak, knowing that he which raised up the Lord Jesus shall raise up us also by Jesus, and shall present us with you. For all things are for your sake, that the abundant grace might through the thanksgiving of many redound to the glory of God. For which cause we faint not, but though our outward man perisheth, yet the inward man is renewed day by day. For our light affliction, which is but for a moment, worketh for us a far more exceeding and eternal weight of glory, while we look not at the things which are seen, but at the things which are not seen. For the things which are seen are temporal, but the things which are not seen are eternal. I want to call your attention this morning to verse number 18. And we're going to be preaching this morning from verses 16 through 18. Not too long ago, I used verse 18 for a text verse. In fact, we preached Sunday morning, Sunday night. We preached, I think, on Sunday morning on things temporal. And then come back on Sunday night and preach things eternal. I want to preach this morning out of the first part of verse 18, where he said, while we look not at the things which are seen, but at the things which are not seen. I want to preach a message this morning on it depends on how you look at it. It depends on how you look at it. You know, there's a lot of things going on in this world this morning. A lot of different opinions that are going on from man. Different people look at different things in different ways. Here Paul is writing a word of encouragement to people who are going through times of affliction. He lists from verses 8 down through these verses a number of things that people experience as Christians. He talked about that we're troubled on every side, yet not distressed. And that we're perplexed, but not in despair. We're persecuted, but not forsaken. We're cast down, but not destroyed. And on he lists the different things. And then he comes in verses 18, after naming all these things, and mentioning all these things, and talking about our affliction. And then he said, but these are not the things we want to look at. All these things are temporal. What we want to look at is the things which are not seen. Only a Christian can understand that. Only a Christian knows that the things we're to look at are the things that are not seen. For the things that you see are only temporal. But life depends much on how you look at it. For instance, a lot of people see a thorn bush with a rose on it. And then a lot of people see a rose bush with a few thorns on it. It depends on how you look at it. One person look out the window during the rain and see a muddy mess. And another person look out the window and thank God for watering the garden. It depends on how you look at it. If you've ever experienced riding or flying in an airplane, I've been on the ground at times before and had a few experiences flying, but I've been on an airplane before when the weather was terrible. I never will forget an experience I had one time, and in fact, it's about this time of year, right after the week between Christmas and New Year's. Went to Florida with a friend of ours in a small plane. We flew from Chattanooga down to Florida in the week between Christmas and New Year's in a little old single-engine plane. My wife and I and this friend of ours and his wife. And we got down there, and I'm telling you, the weather was terrible. We couldn't have picked a better week. I mean, it stormed, the wind blew, and it rained, and there was fog every day. In fact, the weather was so bad when we got ready to leave and come home, we couldn't fly. It was safe for that little old plane, single engine plane we went down there in, and I wasn't too eager to get in it, the kind of weather we had. And I mean, it was just a messy weather. And so we ended up having to take a commercial flight back home. We left that little single engine plane down there and got in one of those big jetliner planes and flew out of there. And I mean, it was foggy and rainy and the weather was terrible. But do you know what? After that plane began to climb, he got up about 30,000 feet. He got up above all of that, and the sun was just as bright as it's shining out here today. And it just depended on which side of the cloud you was on. Amen? And that's the way things are. It depends on how you're looking at it, whether you're looking at it from underneath or whether you're looking at it from overhead. And a lot of times we get down in that valley of affliction and trial, and we're trying to see things from the wrong side. Just depends on which side of things you're looking at. And that's what Paul is trying to tell us here. He's trying to tell us to look on things from the right side. He says, while we look not at those things which are seen, but at the things which are not seen. Now let's look at some things in these verses this morning. And I want to just share with you for a few minutes on it depends on how you look at it. Let's look at our afflictions and our trials this morning for a few minutes. Look in verse number 17. That gives us a description of these afflictions and these trials. He said, first of all, in verse 18, for our light affliction. Our light affliction. He called them light. In other words, they're described as trivial. Just trivial things. How much of our life is spent being upset and torn apart over just the little old trivial things of this world? Things that don't really matter a whole lot, but they get a hold of us. And it depends on how you look at them, and they just get bigger and bigger and bigger. But Paul described them as light. Now you say, preacher, do you reckon Paul is really qualified to call our afflictions light afflictions? Well, if you look in your Bible, if you hold your place right here and just turn over 2 or 3 chapters to the 11th chapter. Just hold your place here and turn to the 11th chapter of this same book, 2 Corinthians, and let's see if Paul is really qualified to classify our afflictions as being trivial and being light. Because you see in 2 Corinthians 11, verse 23, Paul talks about, he said, are they ministers in Christ? He said, I am more, in labors more abundant, in stripes above measure, in prison more frequent, in deaths often. Of the Jews 5 times received I 40 stripes, save one. Thrice I was beaten with rods. Once I was stoned. Thrice I suffered shipwreck. A night and a day I've been in the deep. In journeying often, in perils of water, in perils of robbers, in perils of mine own countrymen, in perils by the heathen, in perils in the city, perils in the wilderness, in perils in the sea, in perils among false brethren. And he said, in weariness and painfulness, in watchings often, in hunger, thirst, in fastings often, in cold and nakedness. And besides those things, there without that which cometh upon me daily, the care of all the churches. Paul lists all these things that had happened to him. And yet he comes to the conclusion that all these things are just trivial. Well, I don't know about you, but from reading a description of all these things, I don't know whether they'd seem to me trivial or not. But it depends on how you look at it. It depends on whether you're looking from underneath or overhead. And Paul said, our light affliction, they're trivial. They seem so small. They seem to be so insignificant compared to eternal things. You remember that old song, I haven't heard it sang in a long time, that the toils of the road will seem nothing when I get to the end of the way. I would tell you our light affliction down here, just trivial compared to the eternal weight of glory that awaits us. Now, I want to tell you, the moments of trial and suffering they will have down here, compared to glory, what are they? There is nothing. We get to heaven, I believe that you hear a lot of folks sometimes, they say, boy, when we get to heaven, we're going to sit down and talk over all of our troubles. I don't even think I'll be questioning God about some things. A lot of folks think, well, when you get to heaven, I'm going to ask God why He let this happen and why He let that happen. I think I'm going to be so consumed with heaven when I get there that what I've left on this earth, even questions unanswered, I don't even think they're going to matter. The toils of the road are going to seem nothing when I get to the end of the way. I want to tell you, the Lord gives us some things. He has given us some things this morning to get our mind and our eyes off of the trivial and off of these light afflictions and to be focused on an eternal weight of glory that awaits for us in heaven. I'll never will forget when I was a little old boy, I used to hate to go to the doctor worse than anything. I hated to go to the doctor, and I'd just pitch a fit and cry. And I know none of y'all never been that way. I'm the only one that's ever been that way in my life. But I remember that when I'd go to the doctor, I'd just scream and cry and pitch a fit. But do you know what? I always look forward. My dad always tell me, son, if you'll be good now and don't cry. He said, we're going to go to 5 and 10 just after we get out of the doctor. He's trying to get my mind off of my affliction and trying to get my mind on something else. And I'd go in there and get a shot of penicillin, and you'd think I was dying. You could hear me crying for 4 blocks away and screaming and all of that. And some of you think I'm exaggerating right now, but I'm really not. It was that bad. But do you know, 5 minutes out of the doctor's office and down the street there in Dalton, Georgia, as a little old boy, my dad had me by the arm. We'd go into 5 and 10, and I'd go in there, and he'd buy me a new toy or something, and I'd be on my merry way. I'd already forgot about all that pain that I'd gone through back down there in the doctor's office when I got that shot of penicillin. And I want to tell you something. God has something for us this morning that we can focus our attention upon and fix our sights upon, and that place is called glory and eternity. And you and I this morning, one of these days, we get to the end of the road. These little old trivial things that has so occupied us, and that is so burdened us down and consumed us mentally and emotionally, they're going to seem nothing when we get to the end of the way. I want to tell you, Paul describes these moments of affliction. He describes them as trivial. Now look at it again. He said in verse 17, for our light affliction, which is but for a moment. He not only says they're trivial by calling them light affliction, but also in that verse he calls them temporary. He said, for our light affliction, which is but for a moment. Which is but for a moment. Somebody said, well, preacher, I've had trouble all my life. Well, how long is your life? James said it's just a little vapor that appears for a season and then vanishes away. Well, our life's only a moment. But he said that these afflictions are not only trivial and light, but he said these afflictions are only temporary. They're but for a moment. I want to tell you something. Listen, I know this morning that there's people here in this building. You didn't get a lot out of that first point because what you're going through is not very trivial to you. You're having a hard time comparing what you're going through this morning, the burdens you're carrying, and the heartaches that you feel. You're having a hard time comparing that with glory because you're living in the now and now. And you're having a hard time getting your eyes off your affliction. But I want to tell you something this morning. Those problems, those afflictions, those troubles that you're experiencing this morning, I want to say to you that if you can't take courage over the fact that they're trivial and light compared to glory, you ought to be able to take courage this morning that they're only temporary. And I just want to tell you this morning, whether you believe it or not, yes, the sun is going to shine for you again. One of these days, the clouds are going to be lifted away. The sun is going to break through those clouds of gloom that hang over your life. And things are going to get better one of these days. Things are going to look up again. Don't give up. What you're going through is only, I know, you think it's going to last forever. I know you think, you lay down on your bed at night and the lights are out and you lay there in the blackness and the stillness of the night and you think, my soul, will it ever end? Will it ever get over? And will things ever get better? Will this problem, will this burden ever go away? Am I going to be plagued with it from now on? Now, I want to tell you something this morning, that it is only temporary. It is only temporary. The sun's going to shine again. Yes, the sun's going to shine again. The clouds are going to lift. Brightness is going to shine on you again. Paul said these afflictions are only trivial compared to glory. He said they're only temporary, which is but for a moment. Now, I know they seem forever sometime when you're the one going through them. They seem forever. They seem to just to go on and on and on. And it seems that there's no light at the end of the tunnel. Now, I want to tell you something this morning. These afflictions, they're only temporary. Let's look at another important thing about them this morning. Verse number 17, for our light affliction, they're trivial, which is but for a moment, they're temporary. And then he said, worketh for us. Underline those three little words right there. Worketh for us. Worketh for us. You see, they're not only trivial, they're not only temporary, but they're also transforming. Because those light afflictions, which is but for a moment, they're not working against you, they're working for you. Now, I didn't read that wrong. He said, for our light affliction, which is but for a moment, worketh for us. Now, we think that verse ought to read, these heavy afflictions, which seem to be forever, are killing us. Amen. As Danny Pryor says, do that way if you know what I'm talking about. That's the way we'd like for that verse to read, because that's the way it seems to us sometimes, isn't it? But our light affliction, which is but for a moment, worketh for us. For us. They're on your side. And whether you realize it or not, they're transforming your life. They're working for you. Listen, many have been the storms. Many have been the trials. Many have been the burdens down through the years that I've tried to live for God and tried to serve God. But I want to tell you something. I cannot think of a single trial or trouble or storm that I've ever come through. But what I wasn't a better man when I got through the other side of it than when I went in. The storms you think that are destroying you are working for you. And you know what they're working for you? They're working for you a far more eternal weight of glory. Working for us a far more exceeding and eternal weight of glory. You know what that's doing? Suppose this morning that there were a scale. He talks about a far more exceeding eternal weight of glory. Every trial you have just adds to that weight of glory. Just keeps adding to it. Every trial you have. In other words, you know what it's going to do? Every trial you have just making heaven a little sweeter. You know what Brother John told me the other Sunday? I'm talking about Brother John Hobbs' father, what he told me the other day when his mother went home to be with the Lord. He said heaven just seems a little closer. Heaven just seems a little more real. Just makes me look forward to going there that much more. Oh, listen, what an affliction. What a time of trouble is when you follow your mother to the cemetery and see the remains lowered in the ground and you say goodbye for the last time on this earth. And I want to tell you, every time you walk to the cemetery and every time you follow that casket out there to that city of the dead where those remains are given back to Mother Earth from whence they came, I want to tell you, heaven just gets a little brighter. Heaven just gets a little sweeter. Every time you go through a time of physical suffering, and when it passes and it's over and you get back to health again, you know what you do? You appreciate your health better than you did before you got sick. Amen? Old Brother Derek back here has been struggling for months with a broke arm, limited in what he can do with it. I'm going to tell you, when that arm gets fixed up and it gets back where he can use it again, he appreciates that arm a whole lot more than he used to. Amen? It's like this old throat of mine. When this thing gets fixed up, I'm going to appreciate being able to preach and holler and scream and run and jump and shout when I want to a lot better than I have been. Amen? These afflictions are working for us. They're working for us. They're adding to that eternal weight of glory. They just make it a little brighter. Not only did he say, are they working for us? Not only are these burdens and afflictions transforming, but he said in verse number 16, they're triumphant. He said, for which cause we faint not, though our outward man perish, yet the inward man is renewed day by day. For our light affliction, which is but for a moment, worketh for us a far more exceeding eternal weight of glory. While we look not to things which are seen, but to things which are not seen. For the things which are seen are temporal, but the things which are not seen are eternal. This is why we don't faint. Paul lists all these things from verses 8 and following, and talks about all these things. Then he draws a conclusion. He says, here's why we don't faint. You know what that word faint there means? It means giving mental assent to quitting and giving up. You know why we don't quit? Because we know they're trivial compared to glory. You know why we don't quit? Because we know they're temporary and they're going to pass. You know why we don't quit? Because we know they're transforming. They're working for us. A far more exceeding and eternal weight of glory. That's why we don't quit. They're triumphant. And I can look at these things this morning and I can take courage. I don't have to faint. I don't have to give up. I don't have to quit, because the conclusion that Paul draws about these afflictions are that they're only trivial, they're temporary, they're transforming, they're on my side, they're working for me, and for this cause, I don't have to faint. I don't have to quit. I don't have to give up. If you're here this morning, you're going through a time of trouble, going through a time of heartache. You may be this morning having trouble in your life. You may be suffering physical affliction of some kind. You may be feeling the loneliness. I preached Wednesday night on what a friend we have in Jesus. And I mentioned on Wednesday night before the message that the psychiatrists and people of our day say that Christmas and the holiday season are some of the most depressing times, and people feel more lonely at Christmas than others. And I preached on what a friend we have in Jesus, the fact we're never alone. We got people in this church, you've said goodbye to loved ones since this time last year. We've got people in this church, your health is not what it was this time last year. But I want to tell you, God's still on the throne, and you're never alone. Jesus is with you. In your loneliest, darkest, deepest valley, Jesus is there. And I just want you to know that you don't have to faint. You don't have to give up. You don't have to quit, because these burdens are temporary. They're trivial compared to glory. What I'm trying to do this morning is get your attention off of the temporary and get your attention fixed on the eternal, because it's the eternal that keeps us going. If all we had to live for was this world, if in this life only we had hope, we'd be of all men most miserable. I want to tell you something this morning. My treasures are not down here. As that old song says, this world is not my home. I'm just passing through. My treasures are laid up yonder beyond the blue. Aren't you glad this morning that we're just passing through? These afflictions we're encountered with are temporary. They're trivial. They're transforming. They'll do something for you if you'll let them. They'll work for you. They're not working against you. They'll work for you if you'll let them. Well, every head's bowed and every eye closed this morning. And that's the message. Just a word of encouragement that I felt God wanted me to share with you in the message this morning. I wonder if there might be Christians here in this building and say, preacher, the load's been heavy. The valley's been deep and seemingly long. I need prayer this morning.